Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We have a pretty full agenda today. Up first, just so they're aware, is Nancy Honeywell and Post Award. So Nancy, I made you co-host, but if someone else needs to share screen, please let me know.
Nope, I got it. I'll start getting it.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'll start.
Yep, we are at noon. Go for it, Nancy. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Gareth Evans is also joining me, and we're going to both go over grant roles and what each role does. And then I'm going to go over a little bit of the different roles and how you should assign them, because that seems to be kind of a big issue. Everyone knows we have a lot of problems with unassigned expense reports or supplier requests and things like that. So Gareth, you want to start?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
So just talking about the grant roles, the first one we wanted to talk about was the grant financial analyst. And their responsibilities really center around reports, so running and viewing reports and preparing the account certs and then remediating any variations in those account certifications. The grant financial analyst is also responsible for initiating transactions within Workday. And we just gave an example there. It might be entering a purchase requisition. And then just an important sort of thing to note here is that for the account certs, the grant financial analyst, because they're the preparer of the certification, the grant account certifier can't be the same person as the grant financial analyst, because the prior role is the preparer and the latter role is the approver. So the preparer and approver obviously can't be the same person. And then we put a web link in there. Next slide, Nancy, right? So then the grant account certifier, their responsibilities are to review and approve those account certifications, and then also to remediate the variances that might exist in those certs themselves. And then we just put the note in again that the financial analyst is the preparer and the grant account certifier is the approver. And so just logically, the preparer and the approver cannot be the same person. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, so the grant manager, their responsibilities are a little bit more, I would say, hands-on. They're sort of taking that broader departmental sort of research administration role. So they're, really managing the grant budgets, they're looking at expenses, they're managing award tasks that may be assigned to them, they're viewing them, they're completing them. Going back to the grant budgets, they're creating any budget amendments that they want to complete. And then they're reviewing and approving each one of the financial transactions that might hit those grant work tags. So those could be accounting journals, any of the transactions that involve a recharge center core. And then the note here on this one is that the cost center sponsored programs manager, the CCSPM, should not also be a grant manager on any of those grants within the cost center. And again, this is similar to the prior notes. This is because the sponsored programs manager is an alternate approver on the BPs, as business processes for the grant manager. And so just logically, those roles have to be separate. And there's the web link for the relevant information that's on the UVA finance website there too. Next slide.
Yep. Okay, so this is my part. Okay, so recapping on the responsibilities, which I wanted to go over this because as a support person, I receive a lot of unassigned tasks that I have to reassign. And in order to do that, we have to actually research, open up the transaction source. We have to open up the grant. We have to try to figure out On the cost center, who is the sponsored programs manager? And if that is the same person, again, that will go to unassigned because the system cannot have an initiator be the approver, right? So again, we'll go over the grant financial analyst holds other security roles to initiate transactions on the grants. That's fine, but if they're initiating transactions for that grant, that they're assigned the grant financial analyst, and they are also the grant manager assigned to that grant, we have unassigned tasks because you cannot initiate and approve. So that's an issue. The other thing that I'd like to go over is that when a grant manager initiates transactions, the grant, if it has more than one GM, one grant manager, that's great because then one can approve for the other, right? When they initiate transactions. If there's only one grant manager, they initiate the transactions, then the BPs will automatically go over to the alternate approver, and that would be the sponsored programs manager at the cost center. If that's the same person, again, we have an issue. That's an audit issue, and we have to figure out who to assign it to. And it's the same thing with the account certifications. If the grant account certifier initiates, prepares the transaction instead of the grant financial analyst, we have to figure out who's going to be the approver, right? So that's a problem. I'm trying to think of some other things I want to tell you that's important. But it is in good practice not to have the sponsor programs manager at the cost center assigned as the grant manager on the grants within that cost center. This is really important. And since the sponsored programs manager is the alternate approver for BPs for the grant manager. One thing I would like to emphasize is that in the department, you should be running the award and grant assigned roles audit report to make sure you do not have any missing roles. And if you do have missing roles and you haven't hired someone yet, find someone to go in that role within your department that's not already listed as the grant manager, if it's the grant financial analyst and so forth. It's just really important. I'm trying to think if I missed anything on this slide. I don't think I did. I think I covered it all. The other thing is what happens is the same employee, which I kind of went over, holds more than one of the approval roles within the Workday business process routing. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened. I got it back. Okay. Hold on. Okay. So within the business processes, if the same employee holds more than one of the approval roles, the grant manager, sponsored programs manager, P2P approver, expense support analyst, cost center manager, and any of the roles that are going to be in that BP, the transactions will stay as unassigned tasks and will need to be reassigned by finance. Again, this is a lot of work. We actually, in the support center, have hired someone to help us with unassigned tasks because there are so many. And that's one reason I'm really happy that I'm here today to kind of explain that to everyone and to be more aware of your roles. So this is an audit issue and can be questioned for non-compliance with UVA policies. So this is why we're kind of pushing for everyone to kind of run that report and double check your roles. And how do you know if you have the right person for the right expense related roles? Well, go to UVA Finance and go to resources. How do I know I have the right people, right? Expense related roles is a great place for you to go and look. Cost center approvers are part of the BPs. That's the expense support specialist, ESS, senior department finance approver, SDFA, and sponsored programs manager at the cost center. Detailed work DAG approvers assigned to each CC or P2P grant manager is on the grants, of course, gift manager and project budget specialist. And another thing that you should double check is we are getting ready for grant hierarchies at the cost center to be rolled out and assigned to each grant. And with this new role, well, with the grant hierarchy, we will be adding the grant managers, the grant financial analysts. In some areas, we'll also be adding the grant account certifiers if it's not going to be the PI. PI will be assigned on the grants. And if they're also the grant account certifier, they will be assigned on the grants. The other roles will be assigned on the grant hierarchies for each cost center that holds grants. And so what we'll have to do is anytime there's a change in one of the assignees, their role, they were promoted, they retired, they left the department, whatever, that can be changed one time now. Where it used to be you had to pull all your grants and then reassign all of the roles, right? And put in system access requests. For this, you won't have to. You just have to put a system access request in for your grant hierarchy. And you can find your grant hierarchy on system access by putting in your actually CC number, and it will pull up. So you'll be able to find it. And it's a one-time change. So once you change your grant hierarchy, it's changed on all your grants automatically because they're all going to be connected. And Mary Beth will probably speak more of that. And that should be going live within, I would think, by the end of this month or even sooner. I'm not sure. But that's what I have for you guys today. Any questions? Okay. All right, Mary Beth, back to you.
Thanks, Nancy.
welcome.
So just a reminder then on the hierarchies, we are already using them for new setups. And Info Team is working with my team and Nancy to get the hierarchies put on all existing grants. And you can use the UBI report, which we've shown, as well as the system access to make changes. If you need a new hierarchy, that would be an email to me right now. And I'll review and help you out with creating the new hierarchy and getting the roles.
Mary Beth, I have a question. And
Sure.
it may be more applicable to Nancy, but so you said we're allowed a one-time change. Does that mean that, so if we have a vacant position and someone gets hired, so does that mean that it's automatically going to happen, or does that mean we have to still go in and put in a systems access request, but we only have to put it in by hierarchy, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Only one
Okay.
time with the system access
Okay.
request.
Just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
And Helen, what you need to pay attention to is that if you have someone leave a position, that position is going to remain on the hierarchy unfilled until you put someone new in that position. And so you may need to do 2 system access requests, one to put a temporary person in place, and then the second one to put it back to the new hire, because
Right.
it will be unfilled, which you don't, as Nancy pointed out, you don't want.
Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Okay, well, thanks so much to Nancy and Gareth.
Thank you.
I am up next to talk to you all about the end of the fiscal year. And then Bill will provide a pre-award update on the delegation between pre-award and contracts. So quick reminder, we are in June, which means the end of the fiscal year is coming up quite quickly. The award setup team is going to be working very hard on getting all of the new awards and award modifications with funding entered into the system. An email went out last week about what counts for the end of the fiscal year. So if your award with funding has arrived in OSP, complete compliance, including any IRB, IACUC we may need, is fully executed if it's a bilateral agreement, and is in that state by the end of day on June 30th, that will count towards the end of the fiscal year. The award setup team will have until July 8th to get everything entered into Workday and Huron. So the change that we kind of do this month is we transition some work around to make sure that we can spread the workload. And we also start focusing on those setups that have money, new funds attached. And so if you have a budget transfer or a no cost extension, that, isn't a 630 no cost extension, because we know those are important. We may have to put that aside while we focus on the new funding. So if you really do have something that's a priority, let us know, and we can put that up to the top of the list again. But our focus is going to be on those items with the new funding, so we could get as much in for the end of the year as possible. The other way that you can help us out is go into Huron, look through the awards and mods that are in your purview, and make sure that there is complete compliance and that you're providing us all the information that we need. That will just help get things moving quicker and save the back and forth emailing. Any questions on end of fiscal year? Great. Bill, do you want to share?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm here to discuss the fascinating topic of agreement processing. This is a little bit like a Schoolhouse Rock routine. How does the agreement make its way through OSP from its creation in the department, the school, to getting fully executed? So we've gotten some questions lately about who is getting assigned on an agreement, and what does the high-level process look like within OSP as it relates to anything that's flowing through the Huron Agreements module. So I'll start with a reference to our reference guide, which, can everybody see that?
That's a little small.
Good point. Okay, so our reference guide outlines the various different types of agreements that flow through the system. I think there's about 15 of them that can flow through the system, and that can break apart into 3 basic buckets of non-funded agreements, funded agreements, and outgoing subawards. And each one will follow a slightly different pathway as it comes from the department through OSP. For an outgoing subaward, that's obviously later in time. The funding award has already been set up, and so the department is kicking that off and then submitting the agreement request. Then for non-funded agreements, those can really pop up at any point throughout the process, independent of any sort of funding proposal or funding agreement. And those are going to be kicked off by the department as well, be approved by the PI and someone in the dean's office for the school or unit. And then for funded agreements that will have a funding proposal that will have approvals, and when the notice of award comes through, the specialists in OSP NOA will create the usually a sponsored research agreement, an SRA, but it could be a CSA depending on what type of agreement it is. So once something gets assigned, once something gets submitted to OSP, it will drop into what's known as the unassigned queue. And shout out to our specialists in OSP that manage this unassigned queue, as well as the OSP NOA queue. And their role is to take any of these unassigned agreements and make sure that they have the appropriate ancillary review approvals. Like I mentioned, needs to have PI and school level approval before it gets assigned out. Then once once that happens, the unassigned agreement gets assigned to either the pre-award team, so a senior grant administrator, or a senior contract negotiator or a lead contract negotiator on the contracts team. And we use what we call a delegation chart to make those decisions as to which group is going to manage the agreements once they come through. I'll also say that there's a slightly separate process for outgoing subawards, that the outgoing subawards team, primarily Simon Butcher, our outgoing subs manager, monitors the unassigned queue for outgoing subawards and then assigns those out. So once we have the agreement or the notice of award, if it's coming through the OSP NOA queue, the specialist will review the agreement document and then follow this delegation chart. Can people see this delegation chart?
Yep.
Yes.
So they will follow the delegation chart that outlines whether it's going to go to someone in pre-award or whether it goes to someone on the contracts team. So what we break out here is for an original agreement versus an amendment, because we do have situations where if something's only extending the term of an agreement, it may go to the pre-award team. But if it's an initial review of all of the terms, it'll go straight to the contracts team. I think by and large, if we don't need to kind of dig through each and every category, but by and large, anything that is industry funded or industry flow through is generally going to go to the contracts team. In most situations, if it is grant or cooperative agreement funded, so for example, if we have an incoming subaward from another institution that's based off of a grant or cooperative agreement, that's going to go to the pre-award team. Foundation and state funding generally goes to the pre-award team, whereas federal contracts or OTAs goes to the contracts team. So there's a fairly complex division of labor that happens between the two teams. And there's also the possibility that if there are terms on, say, a state procurement agreement or a foundation award that deal with intellectual property, complex intellectual property terms or export controls, or something that the contracts team, for example, has more expertise in, that it may get reassigned from the pre-award team to the contracts team, depending on that level of complexity. So we just want to highlight some of these distinctions that govern, and we're happy to put this up on the website to kind of raise awareness on how that process happens in the background. I think the key takeaway, though, for folks in departments and schools is that once it does get assigned, that your main focus in terms of looking for any updates of where's the status of the agreement, you're going to be clicking into the agreement and looking for who's the owner on this agreement, and that's the person that you're going to contact. I also want to highlight that we've got various statuses as it moves through the process, and also want to emphasize that both pre-award and contracts are focused on adding in as much detail as possible to the agreement records as they're working on them. So the statuses are fairly general in nature, and they don't necessarily capture all of the various review tasks or things that can arise throughout the negotiation of an agreement. And so I know both pre-award and contracts are focused on updating these correspondence notes. So if you are looking for sort of a status update of what, where is this agreement throughout the process, those are some of the things that you can look at to better understand what's happened recently and sort of big picture where the agreement is at in the process. So yeah, our hope is to sort of demystify some of that process. and allow people to, our goal is to better communicate kind of what we're working on and who's assigned to a given agreement. And so the best point of contact when you do have questions, I'll say it again, is always going to be the owner on that agreement record. I will note that those will occasionally get reassigned as it goes throughout the process, because it could be that it's been reassigned across the team. We try to set out this delegation to kind of govern and have certainty as to who is assigned what, but there's, as we all know, there's plenty of exceptions to any rule in this business, and so things do get reassigned from time to time. So if there's any questions on that, please let me know. I'll add the link here to the reference guide that I showed briefly, and yeah, we'll send out a copy of the delegation chart and put that up on the website. And that is all for me, unless there are any questions.
Thanks, Bill. So next up is the contracts team with some updates. So Sarah.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Brown from the contracts team and wanted to share some updates with you all regarding our contracts AI initiative, as well as then some additional features to help the field when we have a lab transfer and a PI either coming into UVA or leaving UVA. So we'll start with the AI initiative. The contracts team has developed a work group consisting of myself, Mia Abernathy, Tim Spalding, Laura Williams, Tiffany Crawford, and Nathaniel Scott. And we have been gathering information, meeting with different AI companies, and are in the process of kind of middle phase steps in order to get to a testing process with a couple of these companies. So the goal here in really kind of diving into the AI world is what is out there that can help us kind of better speed up that initial review and redline timelines. Important to note that at least right now, what we are looking at primarily is the ability of an AI product to help with CDAs or NDAs. And then as we get farther into the testing process and really are able to see what these products have to offer, we'll then assess whether we think it's going to be able to work with more complex agreements as well. So we've had 4 intro calls in our demos with AI companies that are already working within the higher education research field. That was a very big determining factor in what companies we would work with, just because we need to ensure that they understand what our needs are, what our contracts look like, and so forth. So as I said, we've done calls or demos with 4 companies. Of the 4, we are going to move forward with testing of 2 of those companies. Those are Legal Sifter and Lexion. So where are we now? Now we get the task of creating some kind of Frankenstein dummy agreements to be able to submit to this AI product. One does work within Word and is an add-on into Word. Another is kind of sending out separately to this AI company. So we'll create some dummy agreements with problematic terms that we do typically run across a lot, as well as a term, OSP contracts playbook, if you will, which has certain, UVA stances on different language, the marginal comments that we would include when making those revisions. So once we get those pulled together and then start the testing process, that's when we'll really be able to see what the full functionality of these products is. But so far through the kind of vetting and information gathering phase, I think there's a lot of promise to it and a very exciting feature that might be able to help just provide a little bit more of an efficient turnaround time, especially on CDAs with that initial red line and review. So that was a very quick and brief overview, but happy to answer any questions that you all have, and certainly we'll be sharing more information once we're through that testing phase and what we've kind of seen and where we feel like this is going to either be able to help or if it's just not quite quite what we're needing at this time. Going once, going twice. And certainly if anybody has any questions, or if you have heard of any additional resources within the AI field, again, I'll note kind of specifically towards the contracting, please feel free to reach out. This has been a really fulfilling and collaborative experience with our internal team, with groups out kind of across grounds, and then as well as colleagues at different universities. So we look forward to sharing more with you. Pivoting topics. So next, what I wanted to provide an update on and show you where these resources live are regarding either incoming or outgoing PI lab transfers. So we'll give a shout out to the work group that has been really pivotal in setting all this up. So Cooper Drady, Sarah Cole, and Sue Ann Sarpy have been instrumental in getting all of this available to the field, and we feel these will be great resources. So kind of overview of a lab transfer and why we do need the accompanying MTA and or DUA in the event of an incoming or outgoing PI lab transfer is, these applicable agreements are required when a PI is either coming or leaving UVA and plans to bring or take their lab with them. These agreements to memorialize the lab transfer and further allow the access and moving of the material or data are put in place to ensure that we're in compliance with the rights and obligations associated with the applicable material. So to use the example of a PI leaving UVA with his or her lab, we run into a risk of it being a breach of the underlying agreement that originally brought this material to that PI's lab at UVA if we do not have this kind of contracting process in place to have the correct agreements to permit the material to leave UVA, and then that new institution to be able to receive and use the material in that PI's new lab there. This also just is a really important piece to ensure that we're a good research partner to those that we're obtaining material from and to those that we're intending to transfer the material to. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So for where to access the material that we've created to help better kind of set forth explaining what these lab transfers are and to help the field as well as the contract negotiators be able to kind of develop a better tracking mechanism for the material coming in or leaving UVA, it can be found on the contracts page within the OSP website. So if you're on the OSP website, you'll click to the contracts tab. This tab as a whole has been shared before, but certainly just a helpful reminder that this tab does serve as a great resource for some of the bigger, higher level topics that the contracts team gets a lot of questions about. So feel free to please reference this at any time. So if you scroll to the bottom of the contracts page, you'll see the link for lab transfers. So this provides a little bit more information on the process of a lab transfer, has some helpful kind of questions and examples that are common when going through a lab transfer, and just more information to help the field kind of better navigate this process. We also have guidance documents for incoming PIs as well as for outgoing PIs that again just further set forth some helpful information and processes for if a PI is coming in or if a PI is leaving. Another really important piece that we are asking all of our departments and PIs to begin utilizing in the course of lab transfers are these spreadsheets. So for example, this is the spreadsheet for outgoing PIs. So if a PI is leaving and say they're moving from UVA to Penn State and they want to take their lab, and we have a number of different agreements associated to the material that they currently have in their lab at UVA. What we are asking and the feedback that we've received is really positive in how helpful this is in helping everybody track is either the original agreements record number, so whether that was done through Huron or the legacy research UVA system, the type of material it is, if there's a specific name, so if it's a mouse strain, what that strain is called, you know, where it came from, if it's crossed with anything, if it's crossed then again, catalog numbers, if that's applicable, so say it came from Agene or Jax, the intended use of the materials, where it's going. So all of this is available to the field through those different links right there. And really just helps better set forth what we are looking at when tasked with a lab transfer. As I'm sure a lot of you know, there are a number of agreements and a lot of them permissions associated with those underlying agreements to ensure that we have the right to transfer this material out of UVA or bring it in, depending on which type of transfer we're looking at. And this allows the department to really clearly set forth what's coming in or going out, and then the contract negotiators to be able to assess what agreements we need, how many we need, and really begin to work on that. So important to note that, as I've stated, because there are a number of agreements and permissions associated with these, the sooner that we are notified of either an incoming or outgoing PI and all the information associated with what they're bringing in or taking out of UVA, the better we are able to kind of jump in, allocate resources, figure out the number of agreements that we're needing, and can really start diving in, which just allows us to better assist you and help that process move along quicker. That was quick and fast, but please let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll share the link to this page on the website in the chat, and then it will go out as well on the Spotlight, which I believe goes out next week, if that's correct, Marybeth.
Yep, it is.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay.
Please feel free to reach out. There's a lot of information in a short timeline, but if you all have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to myself, and either I can assist or direct you to a member of that lab transfer work group as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Vonda, you are up, and I'm going to share your PowerPoint.
Unmuted. Hi, everybody. Marybeth, thanks for running the PowerPoint for me. I'm going to bring everybody up to speed on something known as Brimmer. A lot of you've probably heard about it already. Some of you probably have not. It is another what I call beauty contest to measure where UVA stands against others with regards to research. This one has a unique focus on School of Medicine. It is the Blue Ridge Institute for Medical Research report. We've been participating now for about 4 years, I think, in this report actively, meaning my team's been involved and we've been working with folks at UVA to ensure that the report is as accurate as possible so that our ranking is as good as possible. Next slide, please. So the first thing that it does, like I was telling you before, is it produces an annual ranking of NIH funding to individual research and academic institutions, and the concentration is School of Medicine, and it is focused on NIH. So what happens is it pulls information from a subset of data that NIH puts together out of the NIH ERA Commons. Next slide, please. So as you all are aware, the federal fiscal year ends September 30th. NIH releases a compilation of the awards in this file that I'm referring to called Report, not Reporter. That's different. About 3 months after their fiscal year end. The problem is they freeze the data about 1 week after their fiscal year end, and it takes them that long to morph it and put it out in the file that Burma uses to pull the data. So the reason we start contacting folks now is because when September 30 gets here, we have a very, very small window to get that data updated to ensure it's accurate for Bremer reporting with NIH and the ERA Commons. Bremer will post a draft on their website. We start checking around January timeframe for that draft file, and then they usually publish the actual data in the first week of February. We do have a chance between when they publish the data and when they finalize their data to make manual corrections. We've utilized that in the past, and if necessary, we'll utilize it again this year. But we are hoping that with us getting a head start and with your all's help, we won't have to do that this year. Next slide, please. So like I said, we start sending the data out now. We sent the first file out to the school's dean's offices last Friday. They will be working with you, I'm sure, if they need any assistance. This is more for awareness, so folks know this activity is going on. So if you get questions, you understand why. Next slide, please. So the reason we engage our partners, which is what you all are for us, is that we achieve better end results. And we really thank you for being responsive. OSP partners with you in other areas, not just Bremer, but this is one of pretty high importance and visibility, especially at the dean's level and across the United States. So we appreciate your helping us keep it accurate. This is just a reminder that the data actually really starts at the proposal stage, because this report is showing by department, by discipline, by school, their dollars from NIH. So it starts at the proposal time, and then we work throughout the year, end of the year, specifically June through September, to make sure that these results are as accurate as possible. There are steps in the file that we sent out on Friday that we'll keep sending out until the end of the federal fiscal year. It should really just be review only for validation. Hopefully the data is good from the get-go, but when errors are found, we'll correct them. There's a procedure that we sent out for the dean's office to make that happen. So if you see something weird or you have to get contact from the dean's office, if you can just make this a priority, we would greatly appreciate it. And next slide, Mary Beth. So just to give you an idea, University of Virginia ranked 38th last year. And there's the dollar figures for School of Medicine. So that's not so bad. Whenever you're across the United States and you're in the top 40, consider yourself lucky, and we should be proud of those numbers. And that's all I wanted to present. Again, went very fast. If you go to the next slide, it's just nothing more than a thank you. But if you guys have questions or if you have commentary, we're happy to hear it. Thanks, everybody.
I think I scared everyone into going really fast today. So we're at the end of our updates. Are there any questions that would benefit?
Just a quick plug, sending the OSP announcements and events page. Check it out for announcements, sponsor updates, upcoming events.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill.
And then just to add to that, our research administrator community groups, if you have any events or important dates coming up that you would like to be featured on our announcements page, send me an email. You can email osp-help or QPQ5QX is my computer ID. Yeah.
Really easy to remember that one. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time.